Welcome back to One American Baseball Podcast. You are joining us for episode 54 of this great and wonderful podcast, if I do say so myself. I am Jaden. I am your resident Reds expert and kind of regretting that life decision here this past week. I'm joined as always by my co host, Chris, who is the Guardian expert in this neck of the woods. He is going to talk about his Guardians a little bit this episode. I'm going to talk about my Reds, and then we're going to dive into some around the league like we always do. Kind of be going to be a big Tiger segment in our around the league section, just to tease that a little bit. Big AL Central section, really. Then we've got a really hot team to talk about at the end. But Chris, like I mentioned, my Reds are struggling recently, but I'm doing all right other than that. How are you doing? How are your guards doing?
I'm good. My guards have been scuffling a little bit recently. I've been trying to keep things in perspective for you a little bit. I know the Reds have been slumping a little bit, but they're still 20 and 16, and
Yeah,
they would be one of the best teams in the American League. So
yeah,
at least there's that. I mean, 20 and 16 sounds really good. So
yeah,
but yeah, the
no.
guards are 17, I believe, set or no, sorry, 18 and 19, tied for the division lead in the AL Central, which isn't really saying much, but they're still right there, and that's really all you could ask for at this point in the season. But I'll just get right into my Guardians. Like I said, there have been some kind of lineup inconsistencies. So in the first two games in Sacramento, the Guardians scored 22 runs. And then since that game and the three games that have happened since then, they've scored 6 runs. So it's been pretty rough. Um, I thought the Guardians were going to come around, and scoring 22 runs in 2 games was kind of what the unlock that this offense needed, but it that just kind of proved to be more of an outlier for this team, um, which kind of sucks. Um, Athletic pitching staff is not very good, and the ball flies quite a bit in Sacramento. And then they ran into Aaron Savali the last game of the series, and they got crushed. They lost the game 7-1. So, you know, I could have drawn up. I should have maybe bet on this game, but Aaron Savali had a career day against the Guardians. He hasn't really done. Actually, he's been pretty decent for the A's this year, but he hasn't done anything in a couple years that is really of note. Really since he was a Guardian. So, um, but. Yeah, I just think that there needs to be some restructuring with this lineup. The only runs that have come in the last 2 days have been from a home run. One of them was by David Fry a couple days ago, and then the other one was a 3-run homer by Reese Hoskins yesterday. Those were the only 3 runs the Guardians scored. The Guardians had a lead in both games, and they just couldn't get anything going the rest of the game. So that's just kind of been the story of the season for the Guardians. They'll get a little bit going, and they'll show some momentum, and then it'll just, for one reason or another, that momentum is going to get halted. So but I don't think that Stephen Kwan should be leading off anymore. I think it's high in time to move him down the lineup. I understand he's been leading off for multiple years at this point, really the last like 4 full seasons, but you can't have this keep going for that much longer. He's put up point 0.2 wins above replacement this year. He has a 63 OPS plus. He only has a 303 on base percentage, which is 10th on the team. So, I mean, the objective of the leadoff hitter is to get on base, and he's not even in the starting lineup as far as the team stacks up. So you need to get Stephen Kwan out of the leadoff spot. I think it's got to happen sooner rather than later. I know it's going to be kind of awkward, but it needs to be done. I think Travis Bazzana, Chase DeLauder, and Daniel Schneemann are would at least be better than Stephen Kwan in the leadoff role. I know that Daniel Schneemann led off a couple games this year when Stephen Kwan was out. He did a fine job. I will say that Daniel Schneemann has cooled off a little bit, but I still think that he just given his um his stats and stuff. I think he's still a league average to maybe a little bit above league average hitter. And he puts up really good at bats. He has some pop on the ball now. So I think Schneemann would be better. Chase DeLauter has really proven himself to be really he's been the best hitter on the team this year. There's always Jose Ramirez. He's a top two hitter on the team. I don't think there's any doubt about Chase DeLauter at this point, just barring health issues and stuff. And then, Travis Bazzana, I think that just given his at bat quality, I understand he's only hitting a buck 74 this year, but Bazzana has an on base percentage of 345, and he hasn't really gotten things going yet. Bazzana just looks really comfortable at the plate. And I think that says a lot about, potentially being in the leadoff role. I think he's ready to potentially lead off some games. And, the Guardians need a heartbeat in this lineup. It's kind of tough when you have a guy that's leading off games who is going to pop the ball up to start the game, like pop up to left field, maybe like a 4 or 5 pitch strikeout, maybe like a little grounder to second base, 1 or 2 pitch at bat. That's kind of been the story for Stephen Kwan this season. I know I mentioned a lot of his sabermetrics in the last episode, and he had a couple of decent games since we last checked in, but it really hasn't been there really hasn't been any real consistency of note. So I think you got to take a little bit of pressure off him. I also am kind of doubling down on the fact that he should probably just play left field and then let Schneemann or Martinez play center. So yeah, I think a lineup restructure needs to happen very, very soon. Also, I mean, I've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but Jose Ramirez hasn't been the typical Jose Ramirez that we know and love. He's been a league average hitter this year. He hasn't really set the world on fire defensively either. He's just been a league average player this year, which, in the last decade or so, the Guardians have been relying on Jose Ramirez to be an MVP candidate. And I'm not doubting him by any means, but all I'm saying is that he hasn't been that caliber player this year. Um, and that was a big reason why the Guardians weren't dead last year was, Jose Ramirez was one of the best hitters in baseball. And he needs to start picking it up in order for this offense to really get things going at a consistent rate. That's not to mention his statistics with runners in scoring position, which it hasn't gotten much better since the last time we checked in. Usually he's around a 130 to 140 OPS plus. He's only at a 104 right now. And a lot of that is coming low leverage situations. So um, I believe in Jose Ramirez. I think he's going to get things going eventually, but it's been pretty rough so far to see him, especially hitting in some clutch situations. He just hasn't really gotten a hold of the ball at his typical in his typical fashion. I don't really yeah, I don't really know what's going on with him this year, but he hasn't been himself. Um, so I made a little exercise. I crafted up my ideal Guardians lineup, and it differs quite a bit from what the actual lineup has been from day to day. So I made a lineup for both versus lefties and versus righties. So I'll just go through my lineup versus lefties. So versus lefties, this is interesting. There's not really a good option for a leadoff spot versus left-handed pitchers, to be honest. I mean, Stephen Kwan he's been fine against lefties in his career. I mean, he definitely like is a one-trick pony as far as hitting against lefties go. He'll get an off-speed pitch inside and then he'll pull it. So it's relatively easy to pitch to Stephen Kwan as a left-handed pitcher. You gotta put the ball outside, like something, a fastball outside, and he's not catching up to it. So I have Chase DeLauter leading off versus left-handed pitchers. He's a left-handed hitter, but he's put up some really impressive at bats versus left-handed pitchers this year. So I got DeLauder leading off and setting the tone, and then I have hitting second. I have one of the two of Daniel Schneemann or Angel Martinez. Probably Angel Martinez starting since he's a switch hitter, although Angel Martinez is below league average hitting from the right side of the plate. So that's something to consider, but I think that Schneemann should be playing in some form or fashion every single night, and he's been one of our best hitters this year, so that's why I have them kind of platooning in the two spot. Hitting third, I have Ramirez. I have Ramirez hitting third regardless, so that's just where he performs best. And then hitting cleanup, I have one of the two of Reese Hoskins or David Fry. I like Reese Hoskins a little bit better, maybe in like a DH role. I think Reese Hoskins should be playing every day. He has a 109 OPS plus this year. He's been turning it on quite a bit at the plate. So, and he's performed at his best when he's played every day. This is really the first time in his career where he's been in kind of a backup platoon role. So, I like Reese Hoskins hitting cleanup at least for the time being against lefties. He's a lefty killer. So, hitting fifth, I have Kyle Manzardo. He's been one of our worst hitters this year, but I do think that I feel a little bit better about Manzardo than I do like, Stephen Kwan or Bo Naylor. He showed some positive signs. He's definitely showed some signs of improvement recently. He's gotten a number of base hits. Um, he's put up a little bit better at bats, and he's played a lot better defense at first base. I think that um, he should play the majority of first base with Reese Hoskins kind of taking a little bit of the load off. But I've really been impressed with how Manzardo has progressed defensively this year. So I have Manzardo hitting fifth. Hitting sixth, I have Travis Bazzana. This is another guy I think should be playing every day, and he has. But yeah, I have him hitting sixth against lefties. Hitting seventh, I have Stephen Kwan. I think seventh is a great spot for Kwan to hit. This is one of the lower, you can afford to have a not so great hitter hitting seventh. And every year, Stephen Kwan has been a league average hitter, and I think like I said, taking a little bit of pressure off him will be huge in, being able to set the tone. I think that a little bit less pressure on him will kind of allow him to free up a little bit at the plate and not, worry about popping the ball up so much. You're not in quite as many high leverage situations hitting seventh usually. And then hitting eighth, I have Austin Hedges. He's been very good this year. He has an 824 OPS, 124 OPS plus. So, I mean, he's Hedges has been great. Defensively and offensively, I've been so impressed with him. And then hitting ninth, I love Brian Rocchio hitting ninth, kind of as our second leadoff guy. He's been league average this year. And, like I said in the last episode, that's really all you can ask from your number nine hitter is to be league average. So, and Rocchio's been rock solid this year. So I don't really see any signs of regression in him. So I think that's at least a little bit of a better outlook with that alignment versus lefties. And then versus righties, I have Travis Bazzana leading off. Like I said, I think he's ready to take on a little bit more of a high leverage role. He's very mature at the plate. You can't really tell that that he's a rookie. And the reason that I like Bazana leading off is because he's just annoying to face. He fouls so many pitches off. He takes a lot of walks. I believe he's walked more times than he's struck out so far. And I know that he has like six walks. I don't recall him striking out that much, but yeah, Bazana's leading off, and then I have DeLauder, who, like I said, has been our best hitter this season, hitting second, and then I have Ramirez hitting behind them. This will kind of take a little bit more pressure off Jose Ramirez to be that guy, and that's a pretty scary 1-2-3 combo when you really think about it, because you got somebody who's really annoying to face lead off, who's going to get on base 35 to 40% of the time. Um, 345 on base percentage. He's been underperforming. I think he's gotten a little bit unlucky with hitting the ball hard and hitting it right at somebody. So I think Bazana's on base percentage is going to go up, especially with if he maintains his walk rate. And then DeLauder's been red hot. He's been one of the best hitters in baseball the last week or so. Ramirez is going to turn it on. Kyle Manzardo have hitting cleanup. Again, like I like Manzardo hitting cleanup. I think he's going to get it going eventually, and just the power outlook is huge for me. He hit 27 home runs last year, and it's only a matter of time for him. Um, And then hitting fifth, I have one of the two of Schneemann or Martinez. I like Schneemann starting games, but I definitely don't dislike Martinez hitting fifth, and then maybe Schneemann coming in as a defensive replacement for an infielder or an outfielder later on in the game. And then hitting sixth, I have Reese Hoskins. Like I said, I think he should be playing every day, playing DH or first base and switching off with Manzardo. Stephen Kwan hitting seventh, and then I have Bo Naylor hitting eighth. I think that Austin Hedges should come in later in the game versus righties and maybe like face a left-handed reliever or be a defensive replacement and maybe catch like a certain reliever or something. So I like Naylor at least getting some play time just to at least allow him to get things going, but you can't keep playing Bo Naylor every single day and letting him have 500 at bats a year. It's just not realistic with how little he's done at the plate this year. And then I have Rocchio hitting ninth. So honestly, I don't feel too bad about that lineup right there, but just the distribution of outs and stuff has been really tough to see. There's been a lot of lack of clutchness, and I think it is because of the lineup construction. So I think that that brings the team from maybe like a bottom five offense in the league to maybe like 20th ranked offense in the league. And just that alone is going to win the Guardians a few more games a month. So yeah, that's my ideal lineup. And Yeah, I moving on to the bullpen. Obviously I think it could use some work. Colin Holderman has been our best reliever in the last week. He's put up a 150 ERA and 12 innings of work. He pitched an inning and two-thirds of scoreless relief in the game against the Royals yesterday. Really saved the bullpen when Tanner Bybee couldn't get deep into the game like usual. Or sorry, Gavin Williams pitched yesterday. Um, but yeah, Gavin Williams had kind of a rough game, and the bullpen has been pretty taxed recently. So that was huge for Holderman to pick up an inning and two-thirds of scoreless ball. Um, and really, like it's three guys in the bullpen that I feel good about right now. Kate Smith has gotten better. I think he's kind of hit his stride recently, and then Eric Sabrowski has been solid all year, and then Colin Holderman. I those are the only three guys I feel good about in the bullpen. Your kind of seventh, eighth, and ninth inning guys right now. You can't trust Hunter Gaddis. His ERA is over 9. He's looked terrible. His field independent pitching is 738. So I don't really like pitching Hunter Gaddis in high leverage situations. Tim Herron, funny enough, has put up a 0 ERA this season. He hasn't allowed a single earned run, but he has a walk rate of 5.2 per nine and a 421 field independent pitching. So he's been stranding a lot of base runners, getting kind of lucky with how balls are hit kind of right at people. So I don't know. I think Heron's stats kind of are a little bit inflated right now. He definitely needs to work on his control and stuff, which is something that he's been dealing with this whole career. So um, I yeah, Tim Herron is kind of that fourth guy in the bullpen that I don't feel great about, but if the bullpen is overtaxed, I guess I wouldn't be opposed to him coming in high leverage situations. And then, Brogdon and Fest are other guys that, especially Brogdon, has been coming in high leverage situations, and I'm not Connor Brogdon is just not a guy that you want in any kind of leverage situation. He's more of a guy that you is going to be like the seventh man in your bullpen, kind of mop up and stuff. He's just not that deceptive. I just I don't think he should be pitching in leverage situations. So, um, and then. But there's and then yeah, Brogdon and Fester are kind of liabilities. But looking at the Columbus Clippers bullpen, there are a few guys that I feel really good about that I think we could see later this year. First guy is Franco Alomar, who has put up 0 ERA in 12 innings so far this year. I think that these kind of three guys that I think are that are kind of on the edge of being called up maybe in the next month or two. Yeah, Almon is one of those guys. Another guy is Cody Hoyer, who has put up a 1.5 ERA in 12 innings pitched this year. And then the third guy who I've talked about before is Daniel Espino. He's put up a 2.53 ERA in 10 and 2/3 innings pitched this year. I think that you need to give Espino a little bit more time to kind of get used to a little bit more frequent of pitching appearances. But I really like the idea of Espino coming up later this year and being in the back end of the bullpen because this Guardians team needs high leverage relievers. Sean Armstrong comes back. I think he's starting his rehab assignment fairly soon. So I hope he looks a little bit better than he has so far this year. But Armstrong has been a guy that has been pretty disappointing. And he was really a guy that I thought that was going to be able to close some games and take a little bit of strain off Cade Smith, but that hasn't really happened. So, but yeah, like I said, like I already kind of touched on, big picture, this team is tied for the division lead. They're in a really bad division, luckily. There's lots of room for improvement, both in the bullpen and in the lineup. And I think that they have the pieces in the minor leagues for the bullpen to eventually improve. And I think that it just takes a little bit of a different lineup construction to get the most out of this lineup. So just given how this team has been doing recently, I'm not feeling great about it, but I do think that um they have not the Guardians have been definitely underperforming and they're still relatively a 500 team. So can't complain too much. So I mean that if they keep this up, they're going to sneak into the playoffs if they just get hot in September. So just gotta be patient. And they could also split the series with Kansas City, even though they lost the first two games in a row. They play in about a half hour as we're recording this. So this episode's going to be out of date when you listen to it, but it is what it is. So that's all I have about my Guardians.
Yeah, while the records are different, I think we're in a very similar place with our ball clubs. I mean, I'm frustrated with the Reds and the current stretch of baseball they've played, but like thankfully we're recording this before they play tonight, and I'm kind of removed from the last couple games, so I can look at it from a pretty zoomed out view. And I'm it's frustrating, but like neither of these clubs are in a terrible spot where we're at in the season. Um, you know, the Reds, they haven't won a game in May. It's been a rough start to May. It was the best start that the club had ever had through April, and the knee-jerk reaction is it feels like they've like immediately squandered that start. Like it's gone. It doesn't matter. But like I said, it's hard to be positive, but if you take the zoomed out view of this team, they're still 4 games over 500, and they build up such a nice cushion in April that they can sort of weather these losses a little bit better than if they were, a 500 team in April or something like that. Um, and that's what is nice about the way that this team played in April. Um, in all honesty, the team we saw in April is probably a team that was way overperforming. They were walking the tightrope a lot in late game situations. They were winning games that they probably shouldn't have won. Um, they won a couple one-run games. The offense couldn't score runs, and we were still finding ways to win games in April. Um, but the other side of that coin is that I don't think they're the team that is playing the way they currently are. I think they're somewhere in the middle. I think they're probably about an 80 some, low to mid 80-ish win team that's going to have to fight for a wild card spot like it was last year. Um, it might feel like it right now, but the season is nowhere near over. But I do think that April might have been, the ceiling of this team. And, maybe they get somewhere near it, but I think April is about as good as this team could have played. I don't, it's not to say I think it's impossible for them to get back there. And as a fan, I would love nothing more than October rolls around and they did get back there and they won the NL Central. And, these 5 games that they've played, this 5 game losing streak is means nothing. And I've forgotten all about it. But, just being an objective as objective as I can be about this team, um, I don't think that's probably going to be the case. I think they're probably going to play, right around, they're going to be on pace for like 84, 86 wins maybe at the most, and they're going to have to win some games that they shouldn't to try and make the playoffs. Um, it's tough though right now. The pitching depth is being tested. Brandon Williamson went on the 60-day IL with shoulder fatigue. Thankfully, Nick Lodolo's last rehab start went well. So he's going to be back on Friday. So you sort of swap out Williamson for Lodolo, which was probably um, going to be the natural move anyway. And the start that we did miss from Williamson, Chase Petty gave us a great start. Um, five 5+ innings of 3-run ball. He helped out a bullpen that was really strained a ton. We couldn't get the law or we couldn't get the win for him that night. Got walked off in the bottom of the ninth, but that start from Chase Petty was a really encouraging sign for his development as a prospect and for just the way this team was going. Emilio Pagan got hurt last night. It looked pretty ugly initially, but news came out today that it's a grade 2 hamstring strain and he's going to miss 4 to 8 weeks. I thought it was probably a season ender when I saw it last night. That is not the case. TJ Antone got called up to replace him. TJ is coming back to the big leagues after his third Tommy John surgery. So you have to respect him for battling back from that surgery 3 times now in his career and being able to come back and be a major league caliber pitcher after each surgery. I think that's really impressive. He had a 2.25 ERA in Louisville with 6 walks to 15 strikeouts, a 1.0 whip. So not great stats, but not terrible stats by any stretch of the imagination either. I think he'll probably be a low leverage guy, sort of like a right-handed Sam Moll, where he's getting like the sixth inning of a game where maybe you're up a few runs or you're down a few runs, and he just eats an inning for you there. With Pagan hurt, I figure it'll be Ashcraft or Santillan to close now. Personally, I would rather see Graham Ashcraft. Tony Santillan has struggled recently, um, has allowed the tying run to score last night on a home run, 94 mile an hour fastball right down the middle, and then gave up the only run in Pittsburgh on Sunday. He did make a good pitch there, but O'Neill Cruz just beat him on that one. But I think I'd rather see Ashcraft in the closer role personally. Ashcraft has really good swing and miss stuff. He's in the 91st percentile for expected batting average. He's in the 95th percentile for ground ball rate. The one ding on him is he's in the 5th percentile in walk rate, but for me personally, he has the stuff to um, get the ground balls that can get him out of trouble, or he can strike guys out to get himself out of trouble if he walks a guy. Um, he throws a 100-mile-an-hour cutter with a slider that he can tunnel off it. It just feels like a no-brainer that while Pagan's down, Ashcraft should be the closer. And personally, I think he should be the closer even after Pagan comes back, just with the way Pagan has struggled to start the season. You wonder if the hamstring um, was bugging him before this strain, and that's sort of why he was struggling to pitch. But I just think Ashcraft has sort of earned the right to close for this team currently. Uh, More on that I mean, the losing streak has all been against divisional teams, and that's a common theme for this Reds team. Um, since 2023, the Reds are 72 and 92 against the NL Central. That is 164 games, so that's a full season plus 2 games against the NL Central, and they are 72 and they're 20 games worse than well, they're 10 games under 500 in that sort of stretch. And this is a division that really hasn't been that competitive since 2023. I mean, the Pirates have only started to be good this year. The Cardinals have been in a pseudo rebuild the last couple years. I mean, the Brewers and Cubs are good, but that's only two of the 4 teams that you're playing. To start this year, they're 1-7 against the division, and it's just really frustrating because it feels like they can't find a way to be competitive against these teams that they need to. I mean, to be a competitive team, um, you have to beat the teams in your division because these are the teams you're playing the most, and you want to win more games than you lose. And so if you're losing more of the games that you're playing the most of, that's not gonna be a recipe for success, if that makes sense. Like the Guardians, they tend to play pretty well against the other AL Central teams. I feel like, um, the Tigers play them well, but the Tigers have been a good team recently. The AL Central and the NL Central are very comparable. Um, and the Guardians play the bad teams in the AL Central well. They win more of those games than they lose. And we see them, winning that division, or being competitive in that division at least pretty consistently. The Reds, on the other hand, they can't find a way to compete against teams like the Pirates and the Cardinals, and they can't, eke out wins against the Brewers and the Cubs. Um, and so they're not competing for the NL Central title more often than not. And it feels like the same script every year. You play the Cubs well, um, and the Pirates and the Cards and the Brewers could run 5-year-olds out there in their uniforms, and the Reds still wouldn't be able to compete. These last two losses of the Cubs, even we've been walked off both nights, so we've been in those games. The Pirates series, we were in one of those games, and the offense was ice cold. So even though it was a one-run loss, that it kind of felt like we were never in that game either. Um, you were just kind of waiting for the Reds pitching staff to give up that one run for us to lose that game because that's been the script so often against the Pirates recently. Um, this past week has been really bad for the Reds. These past 5 games, it's the worst they've looked in quite a while. I don't want to say the worst they've looked since the 3-22 stretch, but that's like maybe the only comparison I can really draw is that 3-22 stretch because even last year when they lost three in a row, 1-0, the pitching was still only giving up one run a game. It was just that the offense couldn't get it going, but they have looked abysmal in these past 5 games. They pretty much got embarrassed off the field in games 1 and 2 in Pittsburgh. Um, so much so that Jose Trevino pitched in both of those games. And in game 2, Jose Trevino threw the most innings out of any Reds pitcher. Um, in that game, they walked 7 straight batters, set an MLB record for most consecutive walks in that second game. It was terrible. It was one of the worst games of baseball that maybe a pitching staff has ever had. Um, then, despite getting 7 innings of shutout ball from Chase Burns in game 3, you go scoreless. The offense can't score a run, and that's embarrassing in its own special way. And then obviously they've been walked off by the Cubs on back-to-back nights here to start this week. It feels like they're kind of inventing ways to lose at this point. Ellie whiffs on a ground ball that allowed the Manfred man to score on Tuesday night. I called it routine when I was putting together the outline, but it was still pretty fresh at that point. I've seen it a couple more times since then. It does take a pretty high hop on him. Um, they scored at a base hit. They didn't score at an error. I think it's fair to score at a base hit. It takes a pretty high hop on him, and in that situation, you're kind of trying to, you've got to worry about the Manfred runner who's rounding third probably. Um, and so, it's not. I think it's a play he needs to make, but I don't think it's as bad as some people are going to lead you to believe. But still a really, really frustrating way to lose. We probably lose that game either. If he fields that, there's a guy on third with one out, and we probably lose that game anyway. So, we just would have lost it a different way, basically. Um, this team is slumping collectively as a whole. Everyone is slumping, it feels like, outside of JJ Bleday and Nathaniel Lowe. The entire offense is really struggling. The bullpen has been terrible during the stretch. Um, the starting pitching has been good in Wrigley, and Chase Burns did well in Pittsburgh, but Singer and Louder were terrible at PNC. They'll go. Singer goes tonight. We'll see how that turns out. I don't really have high hopes for it given the way Singer's been pitching, but Yeah, if it just feels like everyone on this team is in a slump right now. The bullpen has a 9 ERA since the start of the Pirates series with a 20% walk rate and a whip of 2.71 and more walks than strikeouts. In the during this 5 game losing streak, they've walked 16 and only struck out 15. Um, Obviously, that's not a recipe for success. I think anyone who even casually follows baseball could tell you that you don't want to be walking more guys than you're striking out. Um, Coming up for this Reds team, we've got two more against the Cubs tonight and tomorrow. That game starts here in about 15 minutes. Um, they've got to find a way to stop this skid. Um, Brady Singer has to give them at least some quality, and this offense has to put some runs on the board. Um, they've got to find a way to take one in Wrigley at least, so you don't go 0-7 on the road trip and have a 7 game losing streak hanging on your back when you come back to Cincinnati. You know, in an ideal world, they find a way to take these last two, but I I would just stop the bleeding and find a way to get one at this point. After this Cub series, they've got the Astros and Nationals back in Cincinnati. The Astros have struggled to start the season, and the Reds have historically handled them well. The Nationals aren't, you know, like the atrocious team they were last year to start the season. They're pretty mid, but they did have the Reds number last season. They've got to find a way to take 4 of 6 in that stretch of games and try to right the ship and sort of get the bad taste out of your mouth. No matter how this road trip ends, it's been a terrible road trip, and they've got to really turn it around when they come back home. Um, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's been a rough week for my Reds.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how you mentioned that the Reds have struggled against their division the last several years. And, Terry Francona, when he was managing the Guardians, the Guardians were solid against their division. And they've always, like year after year, the Guardians have played their division super well. And it's interesting how, like, so for example, like one thing that the Guardians are really bad at is hitting change-ups. And it doesn't matter who their hitting coach is, it doesn't matter who's on the team. The Guardians just suck at hitting change-ups, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is for the Reds where they can't beat their division.
Yeah,
But
I don't know. It's like I don't know if they get in their own heads. I don't know if it's like it almost feels like the other teams just know what they're going to do. Like they know what the starting pitchers are going to do. They know what the bullpen guys are going to do. They know how to get our hitters out. And like that makes sense. You play them so often that they should have like better scouting reports against you than like an AL team or an NL East team that you see a couple times a year. But at the same time, the Reds should have that. They should have that same caliber of scouting report on all the NL Central teams. And then, if they don't, that is a problem because we need to have a better scouting department. And, to be a good small market team, you have to be good at analytics and scouting. And that would be concerning. Or they do, and this team is just worse than every other team in the division if you put them on like a level playing field as far as scouting goes. And that really can't be the case because, the Pirates were so bad up until this year that you would think they would be able to find a way to beat them. But they haven't, I don't think they've won a series in Pittsburgh since 2017, or they haven't, or they're like 4-21 at series in series at Pittsburgh since 2017. So they've only won 4 of the 21 series that we've played in Pittsburgh since then. And
it's
I mean,
wild.
it's insane to me. I don't know. Like, I can't point to anything, it feels like.
Yeah, it's super weird how that works. I don't know. I think you might be onto something with the scouting department because, like I said, I don't think it's a Tito issue. Although
Right.
you maybe question the AL Central's abilities to scout other teams. I know that like the White Sox aren't the best or haven't historically been the best organization in baseball. They're a little bit better this year, and we're going to talk about them in a few minutes. But like, I mean, the Tigers have, they've been fine the last couple of years. They've been a good team, but they don't seem to be as good this year, which we're also going to talk about them. And then the Royals are just kind of a mid team, and they're hot right now, but I don't think that they might squeak into a wild card spot. I don't know. And then the Twins are the Twins. They have 6,000 injuries every year, so I don't know. It's hard
Yeah,
to say.
no, definitely. All right, let's get into our around the league stuff. We'll kick it off with our Tigers news. Tarek Skubal is hurt. Loose bodies in his elbow, same as what Hunter Green and Edwin Diaz went through. The early hope is that he'll be back in 2 months, according to the Tigers. He had the procedure done today, I think, to remove them. Um, it's a big blow for that Tigers rotation. Obviously, losing Skubal is bad for the Tigers. It's also bad for my fantasy team. He was my ace, and my pitching staff is pretty terrible. So I kind of needed him to be the anchor of that staff, and now he is gone for at least 2 months.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, this is an unfortunate time to go down with an injury like this, especially when it involves surgery. Because when you're out for multiple months without even like I guess I don't really understand like if this is baseball activities that you can't do for 2 months or whether this is like 2 months from the MLB.
I
Because
I
go
think
ahead.
it's 2 months. I think it's 2 months from the MLB because Hunter Green like resumed baseball activity. He was throwing plyo balls like 3 weeks after the procedure or something like that. I've heard a lot of um Jeff Brantley, who does some of the games for the Reds, has talked about, it's sort of just how hard you want to push the rehab and like how careful you want to be and how much you want to progress, how quickly, because like um, it's not like they're doing any structural repairs. They're just removing bone chips or whatever is in there. Um, but I think, it's just a matter of how quickly you want to try and rush things because obviously there is a risk for re-injury, but they aren't repairing anything.
Interesting. Yeah, I think in this case you're gonna see Scooble come back pretty quickly if in fact this is the extent of the injury he has and he doesn't actually need Tommy John down the road. Because I've seen some of the like he's an incredibly hardworking guy and like I've seen some of the workout videos that he's done and like he's there's a reason why Scooble is one of the best pitchers on the planet. Um, so I think he's really going to push the rehab and I think that we could see him maybe by the All-Star break. But at the same time, like I've seen other people say that Scooble is going to be out for the season. Like this, um, the loose bodies in the elbow is. I guess I'm not really familiar with how old the surgery is, but I've only heard of it in the last year or two. So I guess I don't really know how much like how many success stories there are in terms of the long-term effects of getting the surgery and stuff. So.
Yeah,
Um,
it feels
Obviously,
like
I go ahead.
it feels like a new age injury. Like I'm just now
Yeah,
hearing about it, which
yeah,
um, it might be like the way guys are throwing now. It might become like the new Tommy John. Who knows? It's hard to say, but yeah,
yeah, definitely. And I mean, I hate the Tigers, but I mean, I have a lot of respect for Scooble because
yeah.
of how he approached the situation with David Fry last year when he
Hmm.
hit him in the face. Um, he seems like a great guy, and he's going in his contract year, so I think that's another, or he is in his contract year. He's gonna be a
Hmm.
free agent at the end of the season, so I think that's another reason to really push the rehab for him. So. It's definitely not a good thing for the Tigers, but it could be a lot worse. He could be getting Tommy John surgery, in which case I don't think you see him in a Tigers uniform again. So
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
yeah.
All right, let's move on to the other piece of Tigers news we have, which is Framber Valdez. Raged on the mound yesterday. The Red Sox hit back-to-back home runs off of him, and he decided to throw a four-seam fastball at Trevor Story. That is the only four-seam fastball he has thrown this season per the StatCast data. Not even his manager wanted to defend him after the game, and he has been suspended for 6 games for beating Trevor Story.
Yeah, this is a situation where like it's just a bad look for
Yeah.
Framber. There have been multiple instances in the last week alone where managers have just openly not defended their players. Like you saw Dave Roberts talk about Dalton Rushing in the media
Mhm.
and like how he needs like media training and stuff with kind of the things that he said on the field and to the media. Like their managers are actively like not defending their players, and I think it's super interesting. But I think there's also a reason that Framber went so long in free agency because there's the character issues that
Yeah,
you're looking at, and it's not only like on the field, but he came into the season overweight. There's definitely some conditioning issues from year to year, and he hasn't really been himself this year on the mound. So yeah,
yeah,
I mean
no,
it's just not a good look, and the
yeah,
Tigers have been struggling this year too.
it's not a good look, and I don't know, like intentionally hitting guys is kind of always a bad thing to do because you don't want anyone to get hurt. But I get it. Like if one of your guys gets hit, like I get throwing at a guy on the opposing team. That's the only time I really get it, and I feel like that's kind of gone by the wayside. Um, but now I feel like we're seeing pitchers throw at guys for bat flipping or calling a timeout that they don't like, or because they get a home run hit off them or something. I mean, with Framber, he threw it to Trevor Story because he wasn't pitching well. That's ridiculous. That's Bush League to do that. The Pirates threw at Sal
Yeah.
Stewart because he called a late timeout. That's Bush League. The Giants threw at Spencer Steer because he was, jawing at the pitcher for waiting to the last second on the pitch clock to throw the ball. That like those are all Bush League reasons to throw at someone. And it's kind of like it's not a good look for the pitcher or for the team, really, when guys are throwing at people because, they don't like what they did or they aren't pitching well.
Yeah, I think I would put this in a category definitely below like somebody like the opposing batter jawing at you or something or
Yeah.
like calling a timeout at an inopportune time. That's honestly like just playing into the rules and stuff. Like you're trying to throw everybody's trying to throw each other's timing off and stuff. So
Right.
like that's just part of the game. And tempers are gonna flare. I mean, they're making millions of dollars a year and tempers are gonna flare. What I have an issue with is you get beat fair and square, somebody hits a home run off you, and then you can't control your anger and you throw at somebody when they didn't even have any like ill intent
Yeah.
in any and it was the same thing last year when he intentionally hit his catcher
Hmm.
because he gave up a home run on the previous pitch. Like that's
Yeah.
he didn't execute that pitch properly. If you don't like the pitch call, then shake off your catcher. Like you got to have
Right.
a conversation about that. Like it's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, that's all we've got on the Tigers, but we've got one more AL Central team to cover, and you hinted at it a little bit, and that's the White Sox. They're half a game back in the AL Central. You've got that they might be good. I'm countering that a little bit, but with, being half a game back in the AL Central, how much does that count for with how weak the AL Central has been? Because every team in the AL Central is below 500. So, they're competitive in their division, but are they a good team or are they just competitive in a weak division? Is sort of my counter. But you have here that Munetaka Murakami and Colson Montgomery are two of the best hitters in baseball this year. I agree with that. They have the sixth best rotation in baseball by ERA. Murakami's been on a tear. He looks like uh, an incredible steal for this White Sox team to get him in free agency. That right now he looks like a guy that should have been a Cub, a Dodger, a Yankee. And the strikeouts were a concern for teams, I guess, but I mean, he is just crushing the ball right now.
yeah, I mean this guy's on pace for like 60 or 62 home runs or something this year. Like he's on a serious pace. And then Colson Montgomery, I mean, he could win a Silver Slugger this year at
Yeah.
shortstop. He's been incredible. And I mean, there's definitely a lot more research to have to do on the White Sox, and the Guardians haven't played the White Sox yet this year, but I think they're still about a year out from being like an actually competitive team. They're just in, like you said, they're in a weak division, and that's the reason I said that they might be good as kind of the title of this section, but um, good in in comparison to their division. Not really good in
Yeah.
comparison to like the MLB, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, I think if they get hot at the right time, I think they can make a run at the wild card. Just because the AL is so weak this year. So
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
sleep on the White Sox.
Yeah, no, definitely. They aren't the team that they were, a couple years ago where you could
No.
sort of throw it away and forget about them.
Mm-mm.
Last team we're going to talk about are the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, using maybe a little bit of devil magic. They're 24 and 12, half a game behind the Yanks. Um, they're the next best team in the AL is the Athletics at 18 and 17. So you've got the Yankees and then the Rays and then the A's at 18 and 17. And Chris, the Guardians just played the Rays, so give us your thoughts on them.
Yeah, I mean I mean they play a team the right they play baseball the right way. I mean they take the extra bases, they bunt, they play clean defense. Like Kevin Cash, he's very analytical, and I think he gets some hate sometimes because of that, but he has a really good track record as a manager. I think that he makes pretty sound decisions for the most part, even though some of them kind of look ridiculous at face value. But yeah, I mean, the Rays were impressive. They never give up, and they're a team that's really like based off of the power of friendship, and they're really hot right now. And I think they are going to cool off to an extent, but this looks like a playoff team so far. This looks like I don't want to go out and say that they're going to win the World Series or anything, but I mean they have a lot of the same attributes as like the 2015 Royals, or like I'd maybe categorize them maybe more like the 2022 Guardians playoff team, but they're not maybe not a World Series contender. They have a lot of random guys on their team. I can name maybe a half dozen players on their team total, but they gel together. And this race team, I mean, they just find a way, seemingly almost every year to make a run. And Junior Caminero hasn't even been as good as he was last year, and he's a guy that's been underperforming for them. I mean, Yandy Diaz is one of the most consistent players in baseball, and he doesn't really get talked about because he's a Ray. But I mean, since he has left Cleveland, I mean, he's been one of the best first basemen in baseball. So yeah, those Rays are fun.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up an important point, which is that Junior Caminero has not been the player he was last season, at least to start the year, and the Rays are still performing this well. I mean, Chandler Simpson, he's been off to a really hot start.
He's
Um,
electric.
Yeah, and I mean, he's like your prototypical leadoff guy where
Yeah.
he's not going to hit the ball out of the ballpark ever, but he can, with his speed, he can just get on base, bunting the ball or um, however he needs to, basically. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what those Rays are able to do and if they're able to keep this up. But right now, they look like a really good team.
Yeah, that's kind of good. That kind of goes back to what I was talking about with setting the tone for your team. Simpson has done a fantastic job leading off for the Rays, and since they don't really have like the flashiest lineup, he really sets the tone for the lineup, and that's something that the Guardians have not been getting from Stephen Kwan. And that's why I think that he needs to be out of the leadoff spot. Like for
Yeah.
the until he heats back up. I mean, yeah, this team needs a different guy to set the tone for the team. So
Yeah, no, that's fair. But we'll talk more about Stephen Kwan and everything else when we see you next week for episode 55. Thanks so much for listening to episode 54. Give us a like, subscribe, 5 stars, all that good stuff. You guys know what to do. And we will catch you next week.
thank you.